Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another sunrise safari with the Ceylon Wild Live series. Here with us this evening, we've got our good friend Lairu Sanjeeva behind the wheel, driving our 1982 Land Cruiser, which we love so much. We've got Indika Netigama on the SLR camera work, and then we've got Eranga Dharmakiti on communications. We've decided to call Eranga Ed from now on because it's a lot easier. So we got Ed on communications. So thank you all for joining us. This is another live test run for us during this sunset safari. We're going to be live for a short period of time today because we're running out of light. But our plan is to take a nice little jungle route through some nice little wilderness spots, and then go through some nice grassland areas. Try our luck with some elephants. If we are very lucky, we might find one or two. But that being said, we've been on foot a lot in the recent few days, and we've been coming across so much animal tracks, so many animal tracks that show us that there's so much animal activity in the round. We've seen tracks of 3 different sloth bears, including elephants, etc., that all seem to be coming down to the lake near the camp. So with a little bit of luck, our hopes is to see if we can't catch any of these wildlife, these interesting animals moving through the bush on their way to the lake, as it is that time of day. It's getting a little bit cooler. This is the time of the day normally when animals would start to move around and head towards the water holes to get some water. So our plan is to traverse the jungle areas through the sections that surround the lake. So we're just going to actually take this road back here because I'm feeling lucky on this road. All we need is a bit of luck. It is a very pleasant temperature now though. These days it's just been so hot, reaching up to 34 degrees. It's now just dropped to 30, which is really, really nice. Gotta be careful of these branches. So the area that we're going through now is fantastic for particularly 2 species. Really good for buffalo and really good for elephant as well. Nice and thick. The elephants can find some cool during the day. Now remember that elephants do not have sweat glands, therefore it's very difficult for them to stay cool. So during the heat of the day, they need to stay in the thickets. So you'll have to forgive us for not being live for the last few days. We've been doing a little bit of fun walking experiences and trying to find new tracks. The Ceylon Wild Live series is going to be incorporating not just game drives but also bush walks. So obviously during this period that we're doing all of these tests, we're also doing walks in the area to see what places are feasible to do bushwalks, so that we can take you live on foot and show you some of the little things that we don't always get to experience when we are in a vehicle, such as learning about some of the more fascinating insects, some of the tracks. You do miss a lot of these little things when you're on a vehicle. But when we're on foot, hopefully within the next couple of days we will go live on foot for you and take you on a virtual bushwalk, or as my mum would call it, a sofa safari. Okay, nice. So now it's just come out of that thicket section. Now it's just starting to open up on either side. Now these areas also have lots and lots of these little granite rocky outcrops. And those are fantastic spots to look for reptiles such as monitor lizards, snakes, all sorts of different reptiles that come out to sun themselves or take a little bit of that heat from the heat that is Basically what happens is the rocks heat up during the day from the sun, and before you go into a cold, chilly night, the reptiles like to try and just keep up that body temperature a little bit longer, so they come out to the rocky outcrops. So if we do see anything special on the rocks, we will stop for you. Malabar pied hornbill flying over us. Fortunately, we're not going to get a chance to see him right now, but we will in another time. But these sandy roads that we get through these buffer zone jungles are also fantastic for spotting animal tracks. If we do come across some that are quite clear, I'll definitely stop and show you, because the soft sand just gives it so much detail in the track. It's lovely to explain in that manner. There's a very cool bird in front of us. The red wattled lapwing that's sitting out in the middle of the plains. So we're just going to try and see if we can't get a camera angle on this for you. So there at the end of the field, just at the point of the tree line where that little sand patch is, right in the middle of the camera. You'll have to excuse us for using a little bit of the wrong lens for this, but you can just about see that there's a red wattled lapwing just sitting there at the edge of the sandy patch. So lapwings are one of the most common species of birds that you would be looking for in these open patches like this. So they often would be seen in pairs, and they nest on the ground. So they're what we call precocial birds. And what that means is, basically precocial means if they nest on the ground, it means that they have to develop really, really fast. So unlike what we have altricial birds, so birds that nest in trees would be slow developing birds. So they require a lot of time and a lot of attention from the parent birds. Whereas these lapwings, the young develop so quickly, and they're going to have to do that because otherwise they would be there would be in a lot of danger from predators being on the ground all the time. Okay. Fantastic. Lapwings are always exciting birds, and they make these brilliant calls. They make a very loud call that sounds like, "I didn't do it, I didn't do it." Please pardon my terrible example. But it's definitely, when you're on foot, it's one of the calls of the birds that you actually listen for a lot, because being birds that nest on the ground, if any animal or a predator or anything that could be of danger to them walks close to the nest, the parent birds will jump up and start calling rapidly. And that, if you're on foot, that's a good thing to listen to, because it's a good indicator that there are other animals nearby. Lots of nice thorny bushes through here, so we're just going to be a little careful. A lot of these bushes around us are called Sickle Bush. The scientific name for them is Dichrostachys cinerea. But for a laugh, and for good reason, we call them the pop tire bush, because their spines are so dense, so strong, and so sharp, they'll go straight through your tires. Land cruisers go through a lot of tires when driving through Dichrostachys thicket. Now when the first rains come back in the raining season, we will start to see these sickle bush come into flower. And when they do, it's absolutely beautiful, because one of the other many common names for them is the Chinese lantern tree, where it gets this lovely pretty fluffy little flower with purple and white and yellow on it. If I do see one, I will show you, because I actually have, since we've just come out of the wet season, there has been a few of them that still have a few remaining flowers on them. So if I do see one, I'll stop for you. This is something very interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to actually get out of the vehicle to show you this clearly. Let's just see if we can do that. We are going to be looking at this very interesting mud sheet that has been built on the side of that lovely cassia tree. Let's go and have a look at that. Let's see if I can get this on a good view for you. Right, so over here, you see we have all of this mud that has just been very, very detailed manner, very structured. It's been placed all the way along the street, all the way from the ground, all the way up. Okay, all the way up there. So if any of you could take a guess at what that is, please feel free to comment. But actually what this is a little thing created by termites. And the termites will build these mud sheets over the trees because termites are not able to stay out in the sun too long. So termites, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but termites are these very small ant-like creatures that build these mounds in the dry zone jungles, and they have no melanin in the exoskeleton. So that means that they're very, very susceptible to issues with UV rays, which come from the sun. So if termites are going to be active and feeding during the day, where they feed on vegetation matter mostly, then they're going to have to build themselves a little shelter as a sunblock so that they can be active underneath it. So hence the reason we're not going to be breaking that to show you, because we never know, there could still be active termites underneath. But that's what termites do. So next time you see mud sheets been strategically placed up the side of a tree, then you will know that that's a termite little structure. You'll have to excuse the wonderful phone call coming in the middle of this live stream. This is why we have test runs. But yeah, no, termites are one of the most fascinating things to study. For such a small creature, they are probably the most important link in the chain of how this ecosystem works and maintains balance. So the main role of the termites, as we just mentioned, was they feed on vegetation matter. So every time that you see a tree fallen, either fallen by an elephant, or whether it's a soft wood, or whether it's been fallen by any sort of weathering, the termites' role would be to come in and break down that material. And when they do that, obviously they're returning those nutrients back into the soil to get the soil fertile again so it can grow fresh vegetation. So that's exactly what the termites' role is out in the ecosystem. Now, next time we go live and we have the opportunity to actually visit a termite mound, I will explain a lot more about their incredible hierarchical system for you as well. So we're just driving up the fence line now. Left of us is the National Park / Katagamua Sanctuary fence line. Beautiful backdrop of that mountain there in the back. So on that mountain is where we believe that we actually have a female bear with her cub that spends a lot of time around the rocky outcrops at the peak of that mountain. And we've seen her tracks and her cub tracks her cubs tracks on the road to the camp. So we'll try, and if we do see any of them, we'll show you. If any of you were following the Ceylon Wild Safaris Instagram story recently, you would have seen that we had a little bit of an exciting moment while videoing those tracks, where we sat and explained them up close. There's a turtle. Yay! We've got a star tortoise!
Alright, take this.
Let's try and get this little fella on camera. Come on, buddy. How incredible to find such a special reptile here on our sunset safari. This, everyone, is one of my favorite animals in the world. This is the star tortoise. Now you can see why they call them the star tortoise. They've got this beautiful patterning on the carapace that look like different segments of stars. Now you might be wondering what I mean when I say carapace, but actually what that is another word for shell. So when we say carapace, the tortoise's shell, the top is called the carapace and underneath is called the plastron. Now he's playing a little game of hide and seek now. He's trying to use the concept of if he can't see me, then I can't see him. Silly tortoise. But I can see him fine. Now I would like to actually try and reposition him for you, but under the code of ethic, I'm not actually going to touch him. Why am I not going to touch him, you might ask? Well, actually that's because during times of drought, tortoises are very good at holding back water within their body so that they can sustain themselves on that stored water for a long period of time during a dry spell. So if I was to move him and he got scared, out of fright he might release that water, and that could put him in a very difficult position if there was a dry spell to come forward. Now, here's an interesting bit of information for you. So some people might be wondering why or how I would be able to tell if this is a male or a female tortoise. Well, that's actually quite easy if I was able to pick him up, which I can't. But I'm just going to explain it for you. Now basically on the carapace, now obviously we can't get a good angle at what I'm trying to explain here, so I will just try in a different way. I will try with words. Now if you see how I flat hand like that, the bottom of the plastron or the bottom of the shell will be flat on the female and concave like this on the male. And the reason for that is so that during courtship, a male would use this concave structure on the bottom of the plastron to balance himself on the female. How incredible. Now these things are absolutely fascinating. One of my favorite things to come across and one of Sri Lanka's highlight reptiles. That was incredible. How awesome to find such a brilliant reptile. Love these little surprises. And these are just some of the most amazing animals that you don't come across these animals on every single safari. And a lot of people focus so much on the big game all the time when it comes to elephants and leopards and bears. And yeah, of course, they are highlight animals. But it's these little things that we don't get to see every day that really gets the blood pumping for me. They are fascinating creatures and they live so long. I'm not 100% sure exactly how long they live for, but it's well over 100 years that they can survive. Absolutely incredible. The star tortoise. Woo! Sri Lanka has such an incredible variety of reptiles, especially in terms of endemism. For those of you who are not 100% sure what endemism is, it means that it's only found in that location. So if I was to say that a particular animal was endemic to Sri Lanka, it means it's only found in Sri Lanka. Alright guys, it looks like Indy has spotted something. Indy, what do we got there, buddy? Bear tracks. Yes! That's funny, we were literally just talking about how there's that bear who hangs around the mountain. Do you think there's any bear tracks which are visible enough to get on camera? So bear tracks, for those of you who are not 100% sure, you could actually think of it as a very fat, slightly crooked human track. Is kind of what the back foot of a bear track looks like. So unfortunately, the tracks that Indy has seen vaguely on the side of the road are not very clear, not great to get on camera. But let's hope, with a bit of luck, there might be some further down the road, or we'll just have to find some on our next live episode. It's incredible. We were literally just speaking about how there's been a lot of bear activity in the area. It wasn't too long ago that one day I climbed that mountain and we actually came across a bear. And that was the first time I actually found out that we had bears here. And then since then we've started to see more and more tracks. So we're actually quite sure that we have 3 individual bears in the area at the moment, in this jungle buffer zone area surrounding the camp. And the reason why we know that is because, as I mentioned, the last few days we've been doing a lot of walking in the area, and we've been coming across a lot of tracks. So just slightly east of camp, which is where we are now, this direction, we found the tracks of a female with her cub. And then just slightly west of camp, we came across the tracks of one single large bear, which we suspect is a male. And we also heard the calls of a bear vocalizing, which is a very, very strange sound. I am not going to try and do an impression of that. But it's a very odd sound, and we actually heard the sounds of a bear vocalizing from camp. 2 days ago I heard it, and then Indica actually heard it last night as well. And that would normally be with a territorial male calling to advertise his presence. Normally you wouldn't often get a female bear calling for the cubs, mainly because sloth bear females are extremely protective mothers, and they don't normally let the cub out of their sight. It's very unlike leopard, because leopard, the female would have to leave the cub at a den or in a tree or in a dense shrub where it can hide, while the female or the mother goes off to hunt and then comes back. Whereas with a bear, bears are predominantly scavengers. They would not need to leave the cub somewhere to go and hunt and come back. Bears don't really hunt. They scavenge, or they just feed on insects. They break open logs and get to grubs. Their primary food source is actually scratching open termite mounds and feeding on termites, where they can sometimes feed on up to 10,000 termites in a sitting. Lots and lots of protein, of course. But in the time of year, sort of around April, May, early June, you start to get what's called the palu season, which is, the palu is what we call in Sinhalese, is the word we use to describe what's called an ironwood tree. And the ironwood tree is a very common large species of tree in this area, and that time of year it bears what we call the palu fruit, which is a very sweet little yellow fruit. And in that time of year the bears absolutely love it. So that's the time of year that you find the bears climbing the trees, trying to feed on the palu fruits. So as much as we call it the palu season, we also sometimes refer it to be the bear season, which is not actually technically correct to say, but it's just easier to find them then, because, well, let's face it, spotting a very large black ball of fluff up in a tree is a lot easier than finding it buried in the thicket. So now we've just turned on this is the road to the camp. So this is the area where the last couple of days that we've been walking quite a lot. This is where we found the tracks of the female with the cub. So what that tells me is that very, very likely, more than likely, the tracks that Indy just saw on the road at the fence line parallel to here is more than likely the same female, possibly the mother, and the cubs' tracks would have been nearby, but maybe just not clear on the road. So I've also got the camera trap with me here somewhere. Or I should. Yes, we do. So we're going to set up the camera trap as well. Really great news to see that we've got the bear track so close to this location, because we're actually going to set up the camera trap just a little bit further down this road. All we have to do is find the right tree. Let's set the camera trap up, I think, on that tree. This one or another one? Yeah, this looks good, huh, Indy? Do you want to put it here or do you want to put it at the junction?
Not at the junction, I think it will be good on here.
Good on here?
Yeah.
Alright. Good. So you'll all have to excuse me momentarily, just while I set up this very cool piece of equipment. For those of you who are not too familiar with camera traps, what they are is they are motion sensitive cameras that trigger and take a picture when something walks in front of it. So with that bear so close, if we're lucky, the bear might walk in front of it tonight. What do you think, Lahiru? You think we're gonna get a bear on the trap? Feeling lucky? I'm feeling lucky. Ed, are you feeling lucky?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see. Indy? Knowing Indy, we'll probably get a leopard. Indy's the leopard guy. He's a leopard magnet. Sometimes we have little jokes with Indy where we accuse him of having microchips embedded in certain leopards because he just finds them like it's nothing when we go on safaris sometimes together. There was this one time I remember years ago when Indy spent a long time studying the movements of one particular leopard, and one afternoon I told him that I found this particular individual leopard at this location, and then Indy told me, oh okay, if you saw him there, then the following game drive, go to this other location at this time and he'll very likely be there. So surely enough I went to try it, and sure enough he was there, and I actually did this for I think it was 4 consecutive game drives. Ever since then, I am highly convinced that Indica's cheating. Yeah, so we're just having a good look here for tracks, everyone, because these lovely open sandy patches are so great for tracks. But today, all we've got at the moment is peacock, deer, and peacock, and deer. Okay. So guys, we're also losing a lot of light and we are now also just approaching back towards the Ceylon Wild Camp. So I don't know about you, but for me, the highlight of today's game drive has got to be that incredible sighting of the star tortoise. That was such a special thing to come across. Um, we are going to be going live again tomorrow afternoon. So we look forward to having all of you join us and tuning in and asking your questions. For those of you who did tune in today, thank you so much. We look forward to the feedback that you're going to provide for us, as after all, this is one of the test runs. If any of you have any questions or any recommendations, please feel free to send them across to us. But until then, have a lovely evening, and we'll see you all tomorrow for another Sunset Safari.